Today's proceedings, I'd like to start with a recognition or acknowledgement of country. So in the spirit of reconciliation, the Institute of Presilience acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to the land, sea and community. We pay our respects to the elders past, present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Thank you. So today we're going to move through several different areas that the Institute of Presilience is offering today. So first of all, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Chris Douglas. I'm the General Manager of Training and Education for the Risk to Solution Group. I oversee all the accreditation and validation for all our accredited training that we deliver, as well as our non-accredited training. I'd also like to introduce Dr. Gavril Schneider. He is the program lead, creator of the Presilience approach, and probably one of the most educated gentlemen currently in Australia with regards to risk management and risk mitigation. Following along with him is Dr. Paul Johnson. He's our academic lead and program facilitator. He is the primary delivery individual for the large majority of our course today. So if anything, could I hand over to you, Gav, so we can kick things off with some bit more information for people today?
Thank you, Chris, and welcome everybody. Great to have you joining us. And thanks for the opportunity for us to share what we've been working really hard on over the last, realistically, 7 years, which has been the evolution of what we've got to now. For those of us who've been following my work and some of my colleagues, including the esteemed Dr. Johnston, who's on with me now, a lot of what we do now through the Institute of Presilience actually started probably at the end of 2015 when we took over the contract with Australian Catholic University's Executive Education Program to redevelop and deliver the postgraduate program in the psychology of risk. Along the way, as we delivered that, running a for-profit business, consulting on risk management, looking at resilience, looking at decision-making, looking at specific areas like safety and security and risk, we kept experiencing some very interesting stumbling blocks and challenges that a lot of our clients were having. Many of those challenges related to the way decisions were being made. And that caused us to really start looking at the linkage between risk and resilience. In other words, risk, it hasn't happened yet. Resilience is what you need when it does happen. And we found there were significant challenges and issues in the way organizations, individuals, teams and groups were applying that. And even societally, if we look at examples like COVID, there's a lot to be learned in the way we applied proactive prevention, measured decision-making, and adapted and changed the way we perform. That's where Presilience itself was really born, and we found that there were significant challenges in the way we silo our thinking. So really what we've done with this concept of Presilience is we've integrated risk with leadership, with high performance, and resilience to create an integrated approach that enables 4 levels of performance. The first level being self, or the individual, because if you can't control the way you think, you act, you perform and make decisions, it's exceptionally hard to drive that with others. The next level is the leadership component, which looks at others. And if any of us are looking at high performance, we know that we get way better results when we get a high-performing team than simply a high-performing individual. And realistically, anybody who's ever worked in a risk management, leadership, or corporate function anywhere knows that it's a team sport. And if we want to get things working well, we need to engage different stakeholders. So the next step up is that organizational step. And really what we've worked very hard to do is integrate tools, methods, approaches across the individual, the team, and the organization. There is a 4th level, which we only really start to explore in our grad dip, which looks at the societal approach and the impact on a larger scale to a small degree. So realistically, we are very proud of what we built. It's a brand new innovative approach. In 2021, we actually made the Australian Financial Review's most innovative companies list for our work on Presilience. And we're by far the smallest company at that time to be recognized for that award. And recently won the Institute of Strategic Risk Management Initiative Award for our UK version of this program. So pretty happy with what we've done. We think it's awesome. We've had some pretty good feedback. We've also been trialing different versions of this over the last year or two through COVID. And many of our colleagues who've been psychology of risk grads have fed feedback back to us around the efficacy of some of the tools that we've developed and the methodologies we apply in terms of dealing with challenging and difficult environments. So how does this come together? Realistically, we've built a pathway for you. Okay, we realize that many people are busy and you don't necessarily have time to go through 3 to 4 years of education to be able to apply some of these skills. So in listening to that, we've tried to build a pathway that integrates various pieces. So it starts with a skills program, which we'll cover shortly, which then articulates into a graduate certificate, which articulates into a graduate diploma. And we're currently actually in negotiations and discussions with 2 universities for that to further articulate into a master's degree. We also are able to offer full recognition of prior learning for those who have had a lot of experience and are looking to just have their experience recognized with a formal qualification. As a registered training organization, we are able to issue nationally recognized qualifications, which also have international recognition behind them. So how does this come together? One of the things we've been working really hard on is partnerships, and we're very proud of our partnership now with the Risk Management Institute of Australia. So if you are a member of the RMIA, I'd strongly suggest that you reach out to them to find out more about these programs and how our partnership works with them, because there's CPD points and pathways into RMIA certification. We also have worked with the ISRN, the Institute of Strategic Risk Management, for recognition of our UK Level 5 program, which has recognition through the ISRM. So if you are international and you're tuning into this, not necessarily Australia or New Zealand based, you may be interested in the UK qualification too. So how does it come together in practice? I'll run through this quite quickly. If there are any discussions around pricing or any of the other things, I'd strongly suggest you reach out to Chris, who can answer those sort of questions. Paul and myself really focus a lot more on the content, the quality, and the nature of the delivery, not the commercial selling of it. So Chris would be your best point of contact there. What we've done with the skills program is we've built a range of different delivery modalities. So the 4-week program is really 4 hours virtual a week for 4 weeks. And we've done that purposefully to make sure it's not too onerous for those who attend, but we've also done it so that you can apply what you learn in practice along the way. So that's virtual delivery, 4 hours a week for 4 weeks, which gets you the skills program, which is actually the articulation of the first unit of the grad cert. You can also get the UK qual off that program, but it does come with another set of assessments. What does it do? The skills program provides the fundamentals. It gives you the basic tools around the Presilience leadership and high performance methodology, and enables you, for lack of a better descriptor, to understand how the pieces work and where you may be able to or may want to use them. It doesn't necessarily provide you with the skills and mastery of the concepts and approaches to use, but it's an excellent starting point, and for those who are time poor, a really quick and effective way to be able to get the methodology in place and move forward onto it. There's just a little bit more on the skills program. There are various other methodologies too. One of the things we've learned too is that for specific groups or clusters, and the way we've done this with our Risk Management Institute of Australia's partnership is we're running face-to-face cohorts, which are in intensive delivery. So instead of 4 half days, it's 2 full days. Or if you would like this program delivered specifically for your company or a group, we can do a 3-day version, which tends to include the vast majority of the assessment requirements in the delivery. So it's structured slightly differently, but it enables you to get most of the assessment, not all of it, most of it done within that period. It also enables you to take people who really want to dig in a bit deeper and cover the topics and concepts in more depth. I might actually hand over to my colleague, Dr. Johnston, and see if Paul wants to add anything to the skills program. Over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Gav. I think one of the other strong points that I've actually found and the feedback we've received from participants is that it's a very practical program in terms of applying some of the theories that you may have heard or you may be interested in that day-to-day business operation. If I could take this opportunity to add to Gav's comments before about the concept of presilience as opposed to resilience and risk. I think we often forget that the definition of risk is to actually explore opportunities whilst managing adverse effects. And our experience has been in developing this program is that many organizations and individuals in similar positions focus more on the risk and actually returning back to square one, as opposed to exploring the opportunities. So the skills program, as Gav said, sort of wets your whistle, introduces you to some of the key concepts that will enable you to dig deeper to indeed do that.
In terms of those who want to become experts and really look at how they apply these concepts in practice, and whether you work in human resources, risk, crisis management, security, safety, or general management, we've had graduates so far through our various different programs from all of those different vocations, including C-suite executives. And to that point, we're actually running a specific executive level offering through the Risk Management Institute as well. So you can feel free to reach out to that if you need executive teams to be run through any of this stuff. The grad cert, as it's structured, if you think about the skills program as your introduction to the concepts and almost a tour of how it works with a little bit of experiential participation, the grad cert is designed for you to apply many of the concepts in practice and to get an in-depth understanding. If we think of those four levels, self, others, organization, societal, the grad cert primarily focuses on the self and others components, and the grad dip focuses on the organization and to a degree societal. There is an entry requirement, which is a minimum of 5 years demonstrable experience in a risk management or related role, or potentially a bachelor's degree or similar level qualification. Most of the time we're finding if you've had 5 years work experience in general, you're probably quite well equipped to enter this program. We have also tailored the program to people who are busy. It's designed to have the least possible disruption to your work and personal life we can do, but still having a level of academic integrity and allowing you the ability to get a postgraduate level recognized qualification. The fundamental piece around the way this works, there are various moving pieces around how that comes together. And if you start looking at the unit titles themselves, you can see the journey we take you on, where we look at the psychology of risk or human-centric risk and decision-making from the self perspective and the tour of that being unit 1. We then look at the others part primarily in 2. We look at the balance between business as usual, crisis and disruption, and how to turn that into opportunity in 3. And then we actually look at implementation to create high reliability. And I think this is an important piece. You need to be high reliable before you can be high performing. And there's an integrated piece there. You need to achieve risk management and adequate resilience before you can start to own the concept of presilience and move to the next level. So it's important that there's a mix of really 3 outcomes. You want to be excellent at the way you apply compliance, great at the way you apply resilience, before you can look at the presilience componentry around proactive prevention and innovation in practice. It's easy to say, really difficult to apply, and quite difficult to apply at multiple levels. So the way we've structured that is roughly a 6 to 7 month process. If you look at the 7 month duration, that really goes from the time you get the enrollment details to the time your qual is issued. Realistically, the intensive part of the program is about 4 or 5 months. And during that process, it's pretty much a unit every 4 to 6 weeks. And the way those units are delivered is 4 half days as an intensive block. So we do a Friday to a Monday, and you'll start off roughly at 9 a.m. and you'll finish at 1. We have found with the virtual delivery, it's really hard to be engrossed for much longer than that. But there are required readings, there's papers that you have to reference, there's textbooks that are part of that, and the whole sequence of the intensive with the textbooks, with the papers, with the activities, and with your assessments combined to create fluency and comfort with the concepts and the approach. And I'll explain a little bit later on how that comes together. But before I move on to the grad dip, Paul, anything you want to add about the grad cert and how that comes together and why the program works so well.
Well, thank you, Gab. I think you actually hit the key point for me, if I could just say that, is the fact that it is actually user-friendly in terms of those that actually are employed in full-time work, but are looking to explore and to actually build these skills. Just to add on to the commentary, though, because the different methodologies we do use, it does also appeal, I suppose, to people with different learning styles. So it's not just one medium or one methodology. So for those that are different, techniques and preferences for learning, again, we can actually adapt that as well to a degree to assist that learning process as well.
The good news for those of you who are joining any of these programs moving forward is we've had a lot of practice rehearsals and test cases to refine this methodology and the delivery approach. It's designed to try and give the best outcomes, as Paul said, for different learning styles. So there's no doubt face-to-face gets a really good output with this. But thank goodness, one of the positive outcomes through the COVID era is we've become really good at online education, learning and sharing. And part of what we also want to be able to help you do is to build a great network of like-minded individuals who can assist you on your journey and help you as you move forward with different aspects of your own career development and dealing with the different challenges that may cross your path. In terms of the grad dip, the difference between the grad cert and the grad dip, again, is if you look at the units that we cover, and I've just gone back to it in the grad cert, they are really around the idea of what do we mean by the psychology of risk and how is it integrated into decision making? How do we lead and influence with risk? How do we manage disruption? How do we implement this at an organizational level for reliability? And remember, reliability is one step below a Presilience outcome. A Presilience outcome is one step above reliability. We don't just want to be reliable, we actually want to be high performing. And that's why if you actually have a look at what we've done, you'll see that a lot of the structure of the grad dip is based on the idea of you actually being able to implement cultural change in your organization, educate others, bring them on the journey to change your organization from an organization that only functions well during business as usual with no disruption and might have resilience. In other words, it might be able to survive disruption, to an organization that can actually thrive through disruption. So really what we want is high performance during BAU and high performance during disruption. So in the grad dip, it's slightly different in terms of where we're at. We expect you to arrive at the grad dip with an understanding of the psychology of risk, with an understanding of how to manage crises and disruptions, with an understanding of how to implement high reliability, at least at an individual and team level. And from there, we can then start looking at that higher level piece and how culture change can actually happen, how we can lead through change and disruption, not just disruption, because disruption can be a wonderful catalyst to create change. For those who've been around this game for a long time, many of you might have even used the moniker, never waste a good crisis. And that's one of those things we want to be able to develop into the thinking and the capability skill sets of the people that come through the program. In terms of resilience-based thinking, if we look at risk-based thinking, which even though it's a term that's really well known and been around for almost 20 years, we still find most organizations are stuck in compliance-based thinking, not risk-based thinking. So the first starting point is to get the risk-based thinking and behavioral attributes right, and then to integrate that with resilience and high reliability. When you move to the Presilience modeling, what we start looking at is how we actually can thrive when we look at dispersed workforces, like work from home type structures, how we can actually perform really, really well in terms of turning risk to opportunity and not just looking at it as a negative centric aspect, and how we can try and create cultural norms that enable consistency and high performance delivery throughout. It's not easy to do, and it's really, really important that when we look at how we teach, deliver, and develop these skill sets, it's a journey. And our aim, if you think about it, when you come out of the skills program, you should be able to understand the concepts. When you come out of the grad cert, you should be able to apply many of the concepts, but particularly at an individual and team level. When you come out of the grad dip, you should be able to apply them comfortably with an opportunity-centric approach at an organizational level and maybe even higher at a societal level. That's the journey and the pathway. You'll see there's different entry requirements into it. So you either have to have done our grad cert first, have that minimum 5 level in a risk management role and usually have that management experience or hold an advanced diploma or higher. Quite a few of our grad cert in psych risk practitioners have asked us, do I need to do the grad cert first? Again, you don't. What we would suggest you do, though, is do the skills program as a top up and update, because quite a few of the things have changed, and then you can enter straight into the grad dip. It does depend what you're looking for. We find people do qualifications for various reasons. Sometimes you need the paper for promotion, in which case, if you have a lot of the knowledge, we would recommend you still do the skills program to familiarize yourself with the concepts, but then you may qualify for recognition of prior learning for the grad cert or grad dip. But if you really want to make sure that you can thrive in a fast-changing world and add significant value to your organization or any organization you land up working with, then doing the program will be the recommended outcome for you. Probably the fundamental piece that's important to remember with all of these, particularly as we move into the grad dip phase, is that we're teaching a suite of tools, not a compliance-based checklist. And these are thinking and adaptive concepts and tools, not simply standards-based applications. Even though they are linked back to ISO standards, both in terms of quality and ISO 31000 and others like 27001. But it is an interesting piece because when we start looking over the last 7 years at the reason many people came to do the grad cert in the psychology of risk was a frustration that the compliance-based methodologies or the process-based risk management or managerialism-centric approaches in their organization weren't working well enough or weren't giving them the outcomes they needed, particularly when things changed or they weren't being applied with the people understanding what the outcomes were about. So again, if you start looking at the units there, we actually at this point want stakeholders who graduate the diploma to actually be able to lead change, understand culture, and be able to apply that with a Presilience lens to it. So a little bit different, next level up thinking. Paul, anything you'd like to add around the grad dip?
Well, first of all, Gav, I think you've summed it up pretty well, actually. You actually stole a few of my talking points. One thing I would like to, I suppose, is to emphasize is that the key, one of the key outcomes that we actually look for this one, for the diploma in particular, is to take a risk manager and actually make them a risk leader. I know that sounds like a bit of a cliche, but I think that is a real developmental step, which I think people are hungry for, and I think the industry needs at this stage.
Thanks. And just to add to what Paul was saying there, I believe fundamentally anybody in an organization that has to make a decision should be a risk leader. So the second you move past the point where you are simply doing, and most jobs and vocations are already moving past that, because the just doing components can be outsourced overseas where they're cheaper, they could be automated, they can use robotics to do that. Really what we need now is we need to start training humans to be able to be adaptive, aligned to organizational outputs. And to Paul's point, the world is risky. It's always been risky. The biggest challenge now is it changes so quickly. And we want to be able to teach you the fundamental skills to thrive during that change, not just maintain the status quo. And then in essence, not just do that for yourself, but do it for others in your organization as well. So depending on the methodology, we have 100% online delivery. We can do in-persons in delivery, and we have a bunch of the in-person delivery structure set in with our partnership with the Risk Management Institute, but we can also do customized and bespoke delivery on request. We also have set up, just in terms of how this works, we have also set up a post-nominal registered Presilience practitioner. That is accessible from the time you finish and successfully complete the skills program. So just to understand why that's happened, we have trademarked or patented the term Presilience almost everywhere where they speak English around the world, but we want you to use it. We want you to use the tools. We want you to be able to apply them. So as soon as you finish the skills program, basically what happens is you get a link and you have to go to a website and answer about 20 questions around the subject. And that then gives you your post-nominal, which comes with a legal agreement enabling you to use the methodology and to use the tools. Okay, so that you are authorized, capable, and able of using the methodology and the tools. And the way it's done there is that you can use that on a not-for-profit basis or for your organization without any approvals. We also have another layer above that for consultants or other providers who want to be able to do this for profit and plug it into their business, but we're handling those on a case-by-case basis. So if there's any questions on that, I'm happy to deal with that as we go. So how does it work? I might actually hand over to Chris just to run through the application process, and then we can run through the Q&A side of it. And between Paul and myself, we can answer any of your questions. Over to you, Chris.
Well, thank you, Paul and Gav. Again, as always, very informative. So the application process itself is quite simple. Essentially, if we just follow our steps here on our presentation, basically we have an online interview and we conduct that. We submit our application and enrolment form. And then, of course, as with any training, we've got our course fees. Once we've gone through our course, we must submit for our training and assessment purposes. We achieve our qualification and we issue them. The qualifications that are issued are nationally accredited. So your qualification will be recognised right across Australia. And as Gav said, they will be, in some parts, recognised by different organisations in the academic world. And we are working with partnerships there as well. So if you do have any additional questions in regards to the application process, please feel free at any time to reach out to me. I'm pretty much available at all times. Just shoot me through an email and we can organise either a rapid response via email, or we can organise a meeting and we can link up and work through from there. Probably the next thing, I think, gentlemen, if we can, we'll jump straight into the questions because we've got quite a few here. We'll jump straight in with Barbara. Is the concept of Presilience recognised by employers? I might throw that one to you, Gav, if I can.
Sure. So interesting, Barbara. Any sort of innovation is a process. We are a good 3 years now through the process, where we first started using Presilience in about 2018. So I can say with confidence that we're starting to get some good recognition within different stakeholders, both in federal and state governments, as well as for-profit and not-for-profit agencies. What we are finding, though, is there is still a need to educate stakeholders about this, which is why we went the nationally accredited qualification route. Once you have a nationally recognised qualification, it is recognised by employers because of the status it's at. And as mentioned, we are busy articulating and working with 2 universities to see how much credit we can get our graduates into master's degree programs. So realistically, what you should be looking at is when you come out as a graduate from any of our programs, it's a step up where you're actually graduating not just with a specific qual in, for example, resilience or risk or leadership or high performance. It's the bundling of that. And the way you use that becomes very, very useful. So we are super keen to talk to employers about how this works, because ultimately, why would an employer want you to do this? The answer is very simple: to get better outcomes. And we've definitely seen that part very effectively applied, both at the individual and team and organizational levels, when you get this right. In fact, that part has led to our culture change methodology being quite well applied, and to the point now we're actually oversubscribed with culture change projects and actually can't take on many more culture change projects anymore, which is why we're now pushing the training components, saying we can't help too much with culture change anymore because we're almost at capacity. We'd rather train stakeholders to do it for themselves and force multiply.
I think from that one, I think a great step forward from this, especially from Barbara's question there, is, are there opportunities to do customised delivery? Now, I know we did speak of that previously, but would it be good to have a few of us go through it, or maybe even just like a 2 or 3 day intensive group? So with regards to that question, I think probably more the focus is, again, this leans into the culture change piece. Do you feel that it's valid for small groups to go through this as test beds?
100%. So customization, we're massive fans of it, right? So while we've developed a generic process that covers all the modeling and the concepts and provides, the nationally recognized qualifications, in most of our culture change work, it's actually taking these tools and models and customizing them to the client for their outcomes. So just to give you an idea, without giving away too much, We've done projects like this with federal government agencies who've had a specific leaning to, for example, environmental or engineering type risk or outcomes. We've done projects like this around culture, where we've worked with HR stakeholders who've just wanted to change performance within their organization. We've done projects where we've actually looked at the integration of different divisions and cultural mismatch. And then we've looked at how these tools and models can apply. So the most awesome part I think about what we've done is that really with the outcomes being leadership, better risk management, which is enhanced decision-making, resilience, and high performance, it really doesn't matter whether you want to do this for procurement or whether you want to do it for risk management. It's around how does it come together and how does that work in an effective structure. So customization is awesome. So that's the first part of it. The second part of it is if you can come on this with a group or a group of people from your organization, you force multiply the efficacy in an immense way. The successful outcomes we've seen with a lot of our grads are where they can go back to their organization with unified thinking, and they can then start to roll this stuff into practice quite quickly. And I think that's an important piece. Paul mentioned it earlier. One of the things we've tried really hard to do is not just make this an academic program, but actually make it something that is practical, that will make the way you live your life and the way you perform in your career, the way your team functions, and the way your organization functions better. So you force multiply and prove the likelihood of success with that quicker by bringing a few of you on. It's important to note, and I don't want to reference too much of the content of the modeling because it can get a bit confusing if you haven't been through the program. But it can be quite a lonely fight if you're in an organization that's more than 20 years old and really stuck in a bureaucratic, risk-averse compliance mindset. If you've got somebody else or a group of people who are with you, the change process can be less painful and more effective. Paul, over to you if there's anything you want to add to that one.
First of all, 100%. I think the main benefit if you do actually get a cohort from the one organisation doesn't just allow us to contextualise and tailor it. So, in terms of terminology and structures that supports that, but it also enables you to actually drive that cultural change by having a number of change agents within the organisation that are talking the same jargon and actually understand the direction that where it's actually going as well. So by all means, a group, I think, is an ideal way to actually undertake it.
No, that's awesome, guys. Thank you very much. I'll just jump through here. Obviously, we've got a bit of a fan here in Brett. He's fired through with a question. He's got a bit of a forward on this one, which is the psychology of risk has been the most valuable and useful course I've ever completed. The inclusion of the application of skills in the Presilience subjects and much needed focus for organisations. However, COVID appears to have the opposite effect of achieving high performance and instead reinforcing compliance-based approaches. Is there one concept from Presilience that may encourage organisations to adopt it? Let's go with Gav first.
Brett, as always, thank you for the feedback around the Psych Risk program, which really was the foundation for what we've developed now. So if those of you are familiar with the Psych Risk program, really what we've built is Psych Risk Plus. It's kind of the new evolved version of that. It's taken all the best of the Psych Risk program, but adapted it even further and built on a bunch of the concepts that we couldn't necessarily apply based on challenges with our previous partnership. So this is the hard part. And those who've gone through the training will understand what I'm talking about. Our driver is a toolbox approach. You wouldn't necessarily want to use a hammer if you've got a leaky pipe. You need the right tool for the right challenge. The challenge we've got now post-COVID, I think, is fundamental to accept that organizations and people are tired. We're fatigued. Decision-making is probably at all-time low, at least what I've seen out there. And people are trying to just do the bare minimum to survive as opposed to innovate, change, and adapt. So I think there's a few pieces that would be important, not just one from my side. What you've got to do is pick the thing within your organization that will be of interest to them. Because the scope of what we've done with Presilience is so big, it's more important that you pick the aspect of interest than you try to cover everything. So for me, I would say it's what is that organization interested in right now? If they're interested in maintaining the status quo, they honestly might not be ready for Presilience. And then the skills program and the grad cert are probably where you'd stop. okay, or some of those concepts there, because moving to the grad dip would just be too much for stakeholders or the organization if they're not ready for it. But realistically, things like stress management via adrenal response and control, things like situational awareness and vigilance are things, particularly now, that organizations really need. The mental health componentry, and this is an important piece. Remember what we discussed. We've built a program that looks at individual, team, and org, and a little bit of society. The individual components are truly designed to not just manage mental health, but enable high performance and driving those pieces at an effective way for all the different levels. So my answer normally to you, Brett, would have been all of it is useful, but sometimes it's just around the nudging, right? Find those strategic stakeholders, be patient, start slow, don't get frustrated. Okay, one little win is good. Gut feeling from what I'm seeing, in the next 3 to 6 months, we'll slowly see a shift back to organizations and people wanting to do things as the COVID hangover starts to lift. But in fairness, I think some very bureaucratic agencies are still not ready for this and probably won't be ready for this for a little while to come, in which case I'd be looking for the pockets within the organizations where you can have impact. Paul, you're a behavioral scientist. Anything you want to add to that one?
First of all, what a question. What's our favorite part? It's like been asking to name your favorite child. As opposed to access specific tool, it's a concept, I'd like to say. I think is the appreciation of the complexities of the issues at hand, and actually finding that balance between whether it's more about the task and frameworks, or it's about the team and the culture. Because that's going to be very individualistic, even at an organizational level, then at a team and at a group level. So I think the key component for me is the appreciation of how those things all dovetail together.
Thank you very much, guys. Probably this one here is a bit more current, and I think in everybody's mind. I might just reword the question from Vikrant here. Is the concept of Presilience relevant to cybersecurity?
Vikrant, thank you for the question. As we speak, we are busy with a specific evolution of the Presilience concept around cyber Presilience for the cyber and IT sector. But realistically, if we look at the way cybersecurity in the IT sector is run, it's traditionally focused on technical solutions. And consistently, we keep seeing that the vulnerabilities that are manifesting are less so based on a lack of technical expertise and more so based on human failure or human error. So realistically, if you want great cybersecurity, you have to get the human as part of the solution. So to directly answer your question, I feel what we're doing with Presilience leadership and high performance is the missing ingredient in cyber programs. And it's the missing ingredient in the way technical experts in cyber are performing their roles, because if you can't bring the average stakeholder with you, you're going to consistently have vulnerabilities, challenges, and you're going to be on the reactive side of the equation, which is way, way harder to deal with than the proactive preventive piece. Paul, anything you want to add to that one?
It's an interesting one, is that we often see the technical fields and we just think it is all about the switches and the technology, but it's the human interface issues that we have to be mindful of here, and getting that culture driver. Because remember, policies and procedures themselves don't actually protect anything. It's the humans that actually employ that through the actions or inactions that actually provides that safety net.
And probably the last question I will throw at you, and it's the one that I think all of us probably hear the most, particularly those that are familiar with Presilience, is what is the difference? Like, what is the difference, guys, between resilience and Presilience? Definitely got to open up with Gav on this one, and then Paul, if you could throw a bit of commentary on the end as well. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. So firstly, I just want to state that we don't really care what you call it. We just want you to make sure you do the best possible performance-based, risk-managed-based, outcomes-based performance methodologies for yourself, your team, your organization. Yeah, what we did find, and I will give a bit of history to this one, going back about 5 years ago, as we started moving from the risk management as an isolated component of the way an organization manages potential outcomes, because remember, risk management is all about uncertainty. We looked at resilience, and honestly, for a period there, we thought with our risk intelligence-based methodology, which is the ability to make great decisions and get great outcomes, that risk and resilience together are enough. The challenge we found is the way resilience is applied, there's a few challenges. So there's two big differences we find between a pure resilience-based methodology and a Presilience-based methodology. But it's not important for us whether you think that Presilience is part of a resilience plan or whether you view Presilience as the next step post-resilience. Realistically, you've got to adopt the approach that works best for your organization so they get it. But if you think about it, and this is part of the way we teach it, the starting point is compliance. Do the stuff you have to do to stay out of jail. Yeah, but you can't comply your way to success, and you can't comply your way to avoiding disruption, which is why most organizations, and if you look at what we keep hearing post-COVID and through COVID, resilience, you can't be resilient against everything. Some things will break you. So those things that will fundamentally break you, resilience is not the answer. Proactive prevention is the answer based on effective risk management. So resilience alone is not enough. That's where the Presilience piece started. The other challenge is if you just look at my hands on the screen and you imagine my hand is a line of disruption. That could be good or bad. Most resilience methodologies are based on the idea we hit a disruption. Something happens we weren't expecting. We want to go through it, over it, or around it, and as quickly as possible, get back to where we were going. The question you have to ask yourself is, were you going the right way in the first place? Or what have we learned through this disruption that might enable huge opportunity to manifest? And that's where the Presilience piece comes into play. So realistically, to get high performance, it's actually a combination of compliance, resilience, and Presilience, not one or the other. And we'd strongly, strongly recommend that you don't ever land up having a debate of one versus the other, because they're not in competition. They're part of the same package to drive high performance and get great outcomes. Paul, over to you to add to that.
It's always a difficult question to try and be succinct in explaining this. Suppose a really 30-second sort of soundbite in terms of the difference, if you like. Something does go wrong. To me, resilience is when we actually find ourselves stuck treading water. We're focusing on the problem and just keeping our head afloat and returning to some sort of normality if we can. Presilience, on the other hand, is when things are starting to go a bit awry, when we're starting to see the indicators for what they may be, for any disruption, be it good or bad. That's when we actually start to take action. So as opposed to just treading water until we get fatigued, we actually start to find a more economical movement or start to swim towards what we may see as a log, or it could actually be an island, so to speak. So that would be the difference that I actually put out, as opposed to just staying stagnant and returning to day one. Presilience actually enables to build on those concepts of resilience, but it allows us to come back more informed, but actually be more proactive in identifying those issues as well.
And as you can see, we do have a launch special. As part of that, we have the promotional pricing that's included. If I could, I'd really like to thank everybody for attending today. And by all means, if you do have any questions or queries or anything that you wish to ask, feel free to forward that on to me. And if it's a specific or technical question, I'm more than happy to share that with my colleagues, and we can definitely move forward. So thank you very much again, everybody, for your attendance today. I'd like to thank Gav and Paul. Thank you very much. So again, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time today. And again, thank you everybody else.